Remember when I told you China warned the Philippines about playing with fire? Well, China just set themselves on fire, literally crashing their own ships into each other while chasing the Philippines. And what the US did next? Game changer. But before I show you the footage that Beijing desperately doesn't want you to see, you need to know about the 3 escalations that happened in just 72 hours that prove this conflict just entered a completely new phase. And the third one. It involves India and it changes everything. If you watched my last video on the Philippines playing with fire, you know tensions were already at breaking point. But what happened on August 11th proved that China might be losing control of their own forces. Picture this. A Chinese Navy destroyer and a Chinese Coast Guard cutter are aggressively chasing a single Philippine Coast Guard vessel, the BRP Suluan, near Scarborough Shoal. The Chinese ships collided with each other during a botched blockade attempt just 10 nautical miles off Scarborough Shoal. Wait, did China's military just crash into their own Coast Guard? Yes, and it gets worse. The Chinese destroyer literally ripped the bow off their own Coast Guard cutter during these intense harassing maneuvers. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar warship destroying another Chinese vessel while trying to intimidate a much smaller Philippine boat. But here's what Beijing doesn't want you to know. This wasn't just an accident. This was desperation. And I'll show you exactly why China is getting this desperate in a moment. The Philippines didn't just sit back and watch. Their Coast Guard spokesman said the Chinese vessel performed a risky maneuver from the Philippine vessel's starboard quarter, leading to the impact with the PLA Navy warship. Translation? China was so aggressive in trying to ram the Philippine ship that they rammed themselves. Now, if you think that collision was embarrassing for China, wait until you see what happened next. Within 48 hours, the US deployed 2 warships, the USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati, to the exact same waters where the Chinese collision occurred. Think about the message that sends. China crashes their own ships, and America shows up with working ones. But this wasn't just symbolic. The US Navy performed what's called a Freedom of Navigation Operation, FONOP, just 2 days after the Chinese collision. And that timing? That's no coincidence. Because what I'm about to show you proves that the US knew something was coming that even I didn't see in my last video. The USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati were spotted about 102 nautical miles from Zambales, roughly 30 nautical miles from Scarborough Shoal. They weren't hiding. They wanted China to see them. China's reaction? They claimed they drove away the US warship near Scarborough Shoal. But here's the thing, if you have to claim you drove someone away, you probably didn't. Because driving someone away implies they were afraid to stay. But were they? Remember I mentioned 3 escalations? The collision was number 1. The US response was number 2. But number 3 is what makes this a completely different ballgame. India and the Philippines conducted their first ever joint naval exercises in the South China Sea. Not near it. In it. When was the last time India projected naval power into Chinese-claimed waters? Never. This is a first. The Indian and Philippine vessels were reportedly shadowed by 2 Chinese Navy ships, including a guided missile destroyer, 25 nautical miles from one of the Philippine Navy ships. But why does India matter so much to China? And why are Chinese military analysts privately calling this their worst nightmare scenario? The answer involves a 50-year-old strategy that just got activated. You see, India controls the Indian Ocean. If China wants to import oil from the Middle East or export goods to Europe and Africa, those ships have to pass through waters that India can control. This marked a significant shift in Indian-Philippines ties, which have been bolstered by increased defense and economic cooperation. India plus Philippines plus US plus Japan plus Australia. Count them. That's 5 major powers now actively coordinating against Chinese expansion. But here's what happened behind the scenes that proves this isn't just about naval patrols anymore. The US is funding and building a new facility capable of hosting watercraft and assault boats on the western coast of Palawan, just 160 miles east of Second Thomas Shoal. This isn't just a boat base. The base is expected to support at least 5 vessels and is positioned strategically on the South China Sea as a project objective. Look at that location. From there, Philippine and US forces can reach any Chinese position in the South China Sea within hours. And this brings us to the most dangerous part of this entire escalation, something that happened just this week that suggests China is about to make a move that could trigger the unthinkable. Several Philippine Navy SEAL rigid-hulled inflatable boats were towed and captured by the China Coast Guard. We're talking about elite special forces equipment in Chinese hands. Look at this timeline. Collision on August 11th. US warships deployed August 13th. Indian joint exercises August 3rd. Chinese forces capturing Philippine military assets ongoing. Do you see the pattern? Each side keeps escalating and nobody's backing down. So where does this go from here? Based on what we've seen in the past 2 weeks, I see 3 possible scenarios. Scenario 1, the mistake. With Chinese ships already colliding with each other while trying to harass Philippine vessels, the next collision could involve actual casualties. At least 2 Chinese Coast Guard personnel were reportedly killed during the violent accident near Scarborough Shoal. What happens when Philippine sailors die in the next collision? Scenario 2, the proxy escalation. A Chinese fighter jet intercepted a Cessna turboprop with journalists aboard. They're now targeting media. When authoritarian regimes start targeting journalists, they're preparing for something they don't want witnessed. Scenario 3, the alliance activation. With India now in the game, we're looking at the world's largest democracy, the world's most powerful military, and 110 million Filipinos all aligned against Chinese expansion. Folks, I've been covering geopolitics for a while, and I've never seen escalation this rapid with this many players involved. The US has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines. India has the world's 4th largest navy. China has over $1 trillion in trade that flows through these waters. Nobody can afford to lose. Nobody wants to back down. So that's where we stand today. China is literally crashing their own ships while trying to intimidate the Philippines. The US is deploying warships in response. India just entered the game. And everybody's building bases. The question isn't whether this escalates further. After this week, that's guaranteed. The question is whether it escalates to the point of no return. What do you think China's next move will be? Are they going to back down after embarrassing themselves with that collision, or double down with even more aggressive tactics? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if this kind of real-time geopolitical analysis is valuable to you, smash that subscribe button. Because at the rate these events are developing, I'll probably have another major update for you within days. Stay informed, stay ahead, and I'll see you in the next one.